Welcome to this next video from the Clinical Legal Education Association Supervisor Video Project. I'm Beth Locker, and I'm a professor of law and the Associate Dean for Experiential Learning at Vermont Law and Graduate School. This particular video will address the topic of onboarding. Before I really dive into the substance of this topic, I want to address two pieces of housekeeping. First, we expect there will be a wide variety of organizations that will watch these videos. As such, not everything I share will be applicable to you and your organization, but we've done our best to focus on the core pieces we think are most broadly applicable. Second, I have a few PowerPoint slides you'll see as I go through the presentation, but I've kept them simple. To supplement, we've also typed up a more detailed list of the tips I'll discuss than what you'll see on the slides. It's available on the same website as these videos, if you'd like to download it. And the last thing, before I dive into the substance of onboarding, I want to make sure you understand the focus of this video versus the next one in the series. So let's cover how we define a couple of terms. At least for the purposes of this training, we're defining onboarding as the task to think about before an extern starts work. And we're defining orientation as the plan for the first few days of the actual externship period. Of course, there aren't any hard and fast rules about what needs to happen in onboarding versus what should happen during orientation, and it can certainly vary from placement to placement. But we've tried to split it up here in a way that has worked well for many externship sites. This video deals with onboarding, so let's get to it. Onboarding involves everything you should be thinking about and tackling prior to the start of the externship. Let's start with work schedule and expectations for working. We recommend that about a week before your extern starts, you do some structural thinking about what you want the extern to do in the coming months. Set some of your own goals for the semester and let your colleagues know that the extern is coming and encourage them to be involved to the extent applicable. In addition, hopefully your student will reach out to you close to the externship start. And when they do, we recommend that you first set up a phone or video meeting with your student to confirm their start day and end day. These do vary from school to school, so don't assume that every student will be on exactly the same schedule. Some schools have flexibility with their students' start dates, some do not. If there is a discrepancy between your expectations and the school's, we encourage you to resolve those as soon as possible. Establish an initial work schedule for the hours the student will work. More on hours later in this presentation. If you don't already know or remember, make sure you ask the student how many hours their school expects them to work each week, and ask them about their other commitments, such as other courses they may be enrolled in. Establish a backup supervisor or contact in case of emergencies, and address first day essentials, like what is the office dress code? What time should the student arrive on day one? Where should the student arrive on day one? Where should they park? Or do you recommend taking public transit? Is there a key code for the door? Can the student text you? And it's not needed, but it's nice to keep in mind that it's not uncommon for students to ask if there is anything they can do to prepare ahead of time to be ready to hit the ground running on their first day. If you happen to have background resources and information for students to read ahead of time, like organizational history documents, strategic plans that are public, or even a decent website to remind them to review, that can be a great suggestion for the nervous student who wants to start strong. Keep in mind that this may be the first time the student has worked in a legal job, or possibly in any professional setting. A little preparation can go a long way toward a successful start to an externship. Now, on to our next major onboarding topic, one that I'm sure is everyone's favorite: technology and administrative matters. In our experience, tech and HR details can be a big holdup. So we present them to give you an idea of the issues we see, These do vary dramatically from placement to placement, so they certainly won't all apply to your office or chambers, but some will. To start, does your student know how to use your communication software? Even as a significant percentage of legal externs have started to come from the generation labeled digital natives, it's still probably best if you don't make the assumption that they are going to be completely comfortable with your organization's particular software choices. Do you use Outlook, G Suite, Zoom, Teams, WebEx, Slack? As mentioned earlier, during that onboarding phone call we just talked about, students often ask if there's anything they can do to prepare before arriving for their first day of work. One option to consider is to ask the student about their familiarity with some of your particular software tools. And if they're not something that they use on a regular basis, recommend they find a YouTube video or other online training as a way to help them prepare for their first day. Does your office require a virtual private network or VPN and/or a cloud data system? If so, make sure your IT folks are aware you have an extern about to start, so they'll be ready to help your students set it up. Will students have an organizational email address? If so, let the proper people know. And maybe ask the student about their preferred name, if that might play a role. For instance, I know I really appreciate that my current employer has my email reflect my preference to be called Beth instead of Elizabeth. What about phones? Should the student use their own phone? If so, do you use a number blocking service that needs to be explained to the student? Or do you have folks who use their own phones use something like Google Voice, which provides free numbers? Think about all the other standard HR issues you'd run through with a new employee. Are there security or confidentiality documents to sign? Is there an employee handbook you should share? If it's not exactly appropriate for an extern, maybe revising it to make it so could be a great project to put on the back burner or downtime list of extern projects for the semester. Some law schools and some placements are allowing remote externships. If that's the case for you, is there a remote work policy to share? Are there any lingering background check issues? Any missing documents that need to be accounted for before the student can begin work? And then, of course, we're lawyers. So many of you are at places that will need to do some sort of conflicts check. Make sure you're thinking about this even with externs, since many externs are 3Ls, and it's entirely possible they could have spent a previous summer or semester working in another law office or have some other legal experience that you will need to be made aware of. And don't skip this just because they're not a 3L. As just one example, it's certainly not uncommon to see someone who worked as a paralegal for a few years make the decision to leave their job to go to law school. Before the students arrive, think about workspace. For the students who will be coming to the office, even part-time, where will the students sit? Is there a dedicated space? What furniture, peripherals, or supplies will the student need? Is it possible to get some sort of nameplate? Even something printed on cardstock and attached to their cubicle with thumbtacks before they arrive. Don't underestimate how welcoming it can feel to the student to see their name already up in the office space on the day they arrive. For the student who will be working remotely, even part-time, make sure you address confidentiality. Ask the student where they will be physically working when working from home. Ask if they have a housemate. Do they have privacy? If not, what are your protocols for protecting client and other confidential information? Ask the student what is their specific plan to protect your clients. Their business is your business. Where can the student save their work? Does the student have or need a printer? Are there restrictions on what they can print? There are no one-size-fits-all answers to these questions. We simply raise them here to get you thinking about the types of issues we hope you're already thinking about or will go and discuss with the necessary folks at your office. Okay, That's where I'll stop with onboarding. I know I've covered a lot. Please don't worry if you're feeling overwhelmed. That really wasn't my intent. And know that there's the simple fact that you are here and watching this video means you are taking a crucial step toward being a good supervisor. You're thinking about the important stuff. Pick a couple of things I've mentioned in this video and tackle them before your extern starts. Then make sure you're ready to try a few more during orientation. And that, of course, is the topic of our next video.